What's something from the 90s you miss? Sit in Pizza Hut. I was on vacation in the mountains upstate and they had one in town. I got to have pizza in an actual Pizza Hut for the first time since the late 90s early 2000s. We had one outside of town and then that closed and they made it to go one that ended up also closing. Now I can have one of the local places or Papa John's or Domino's. The Target nearby does have the mini Pizza Hut pizzas and some of their appetizers. It's hardly the same as getting it from a Pizza Hut itself. I didn't expect this to get any likes or responses. Since it has the idea to contact Pizza Hut and ask if they would open one near me keeps seeming better. I have enjoyed reading the responses, all of them, and seeing so many others having similar thoughts and feelings towards the same franchise. One of my guilty pleasure is Pizza Hut Pizza Buffet. Haven't been in years and my dear old friend doesn't like it, but that's okay, I don't need to be there on the reg anyway. That Tony Hawk demo disc though. Movies. A lot my favorite movies are mid-sized thrillers from the 90s. A lot of big actors, but not huge spectacles. That segment is dying out. You have huge blockbusters for international markets, some prestige period pieces, comedies and indies, and then there are TV shows, but the sort of Harrison Ford's wife is missing. Again, films are severely lacking these days. I miss action movies from back then. Arcades. Big, noisy arcades, full of actual video games, whose graphics were 20 times better than what you could get at home. And the machines took coins, not this bull's refillable card system. That is why I'm more of a blatant rip-off. Walking 20 minutes to a mate's house, knocking his door, then finding out he's not in. It was like rolling the dice. If I really wanted to hang out with a particular friend and they weren't home, that meant it was time to hop on the bike and ride by the next 4-5 most likely places he would be. As weird as it sounds, boredom. Now I have an endless supply of crap to keep my mind occupied. I never find myself wandering out for the sake of finding something to do, trying to call everyone in my book to find someone to hang out with it. I think part of the problem is that the endless supply of distractions just aren't all that satisfying. They're rarely worth remembering or talking to people about. I don't really feel like I'm living, just existing. Yes, since the advent of streaming services, YouTube and online gaming, I've pretty much never been bored unless I'm at work and trying to run down the clock. But boredom has been replaced by existential dread over how I'm spending so much of my time in front of a screen, or how I'm not spending my time in the right way when I do choose to do something not involving games or videos. Being social with people felt so different and authentic. My friends would sometimes just drop by to see if I was home to say hi. We could pick up the phone and have hour-long conversations. It felt like text message cheapened that. The lesser dependence on technology seemed to cultivate more genuine friendships, but that was just my experience. Yeah, I've been thinking about that lately. I've seen my 3 best friends a handful of times this year, like 2 or 3 times each. But we're in a group yet and that's how we stay in touch. It's kinda pacifying. Renting movies at Blockbuster as a family event. It was special and fun. We don't have any streaming or cable. Andy like it that way, but I wish I could still have that Blockbuster excitement. Man, and then you saw that summer movie in the theater and loved it, but then you had to wait for it to be on video. That first time seeing that at Blockbuster or your local place after waiting like 6 months for it to come out was magical. I remember feeling good about myself. If you were good at something, people would let you know that, and you also always knew that one kid who was exceptional at a specific game, that teen who could do awesome tricks on the skate, or a friend who had the most beautiful handwriting you've ever saw, and other things like that. That was special to you because they felt that they meant something, and they actually did, because you could be watching that level of ability for the last time on your life. Today everything has been mastered by a lot of people constantly displaying it on the internet. We have 24/7, one click away, video footage we can play over and over of them being incredibly awesome on it, and I think it frustrates people. You're never really satisfied on what you're doing because deep down you know you'll probably be just another 1 in 7 billion. And you're not really paying attention to people anymore either, because it really doesn't matter. Whatever it is that they're doing, you can watch someone doing it better on the internet how many times you want. Anyway, things used to mean something. I miss that. That sums it up nicely. Nothing killed my self-worth quite like actually realizing how hopelessly outclassed I truly was. I miss not being able to be reached, or being able to reach people. Back then you'd call your friend and it would ring somewhere in their house. If there was no one there, which was common, you'd shrug and just carry on your day. If you just wanted to chill out on your own, you'd just not answer the phone. Now, everyone knows people are never without their phones. I've had people pee at me because I took an hour to reply to a text. I miss the lack of interconnectivity. Like, my summer camp friends were different from school friends, and I didn't really see my summer camp friends outside of July and August. Everything was distinct. When I went from Western New York to New Jersey to see family, it was basically like being on another planet. I think I like everything being more connected, but that sense of distinctness is something I miss. I never thought of this. I had my school friends and my taekwondo friends. I invited them over once together for a birthday party and it was incredibly weird. Actual 90s aesthetic. It was extreme and alternative, not family friendly, wacky or dystopian like a lot of people think when they see an 80s aesthetic. Example, the entire aesthetic of Nickelodeon in the 90s. Slime and extreme crap. I forgot about the green slime. That seemed a part of everyday life if you watched Nickelodeon. Who's getting it today? The innocence of the time. We still played outside but had some awesome multiplayer games that you played together in the same room. The world seemed to be heading for better and better things. Then 2001 happened. I joined the military in 1999. The prevailing opinion among soldiers at the time was that we'd never see any action. The likelihood of getting into a war and being deployed was slim to none, and we were all just gonna get our college money and whatnot. Then 9/11 happened. For me it's affordable housing and just generally affordable living. There was a time when my kid could have moved out and rented with roommates or even on his own, but it's very hard for young people to start out with the current condition. Straight out of college in the late 90s, I made $10 HR, working retail. I had my own one-bedroom apt, which included water and trash pickup. The complex also had a pool. I paid $320 a month for rent. Video games that aren't online and not having to sign into 3 accounts to play any game. I have my computer set to manually connect to the internet. I still have to sign into Steam to play a game that isn't dependent in an active connection. Thankfully there is an offline mode for Steam, but I shouldn't have to sign in the first place if the game doesn't require a password. Then the game makes you wait for a 25GB update to download and install after you sign in. No social media, not always being available, friends just randomly stopping by your house, much less political divisiveness. Yeah, friends randomly stopping by was awesome. Nowadays nobody you care about will ring your doorbell unannounced. Makes The Sims feel unrealistic to me with how many people visit unannounced, lol. Not being contactable, and it was okay. If anyone wanted to talk to me, they would either have to call the landline, come to my house hoping I was home, or just wait until the next time they saw me. When people who posted meaningless bulls on the internet were considered weirdos instead of celebrities worth building a cult around. During the 90s, I was age 17-27. So, those were some good years for me. My oldest was born in the early 2000s. So when I look back at the 90s, all I remember is freedom. Free from most adult responsibilities. Free from social media. Free from bulls politics. They were there for sure, but you literally had to look for them. LOL. Free from a general miasma of fear coming from the media. When I think back, all I remember is sunshine. The lack of a weight bearing down on my shoulders all the time, and the sweet sounds of amazing music. While I miss it, I am just grateful that I got to experience it. In the 90s, I was 4 to 14. Being a kid in the 90s was awesome, but I do wish I'd been a little older and able to better appreciate how amazing the 90s were. At the time, I thought it was just life and didn't realize that decade would become widely regarded as the best decade of my lifetime so far. The original release of Pokemon cards. Those were the freaking best. My niece is big into Pokemon now, and she just got a shitload of cards for her birthday. Made me want to start collecting them again, but I look up the packs from my youth and their astronomical prices. Ah well. It's due to the scalpers buying out everything. And the company can't keep up with the demand, unfortunately. It's been like this for several months, and as someone who casually collects Pokemon cards, I've been so upset not being able to get any of the new series. Family-owned convenience stores, diners, burger joints, ice cream parlors, cafes, bookstores, delis, etc. Even small neighborhood grocery stores and independent music venues. Seems like I'm talking about the 50s, but in the 90s these places still existed. In my hometown most of them are completely gone and were replaced by generic corporate chains or condos. The ones that are still around are struggling to stay afloat and compete. I'm glad I got to enjoy them while they existed, but also realized how much I took them for granted. Diners are still everywhere, in all their gaudy glory, in New Jersey. Optimism. It was a pretty happy decade. The Cold War was over, the economy was booming. Technology seemed to be offering us solutions before we even knew we had a problem. The products of pop culture almost never dwelled on dystopia or decline. Air travel was about as dangerous as bus travel. Acid rain and the hole in the ozone layer were problems of the decade before that seemed to have been fixed. And climate change was still called global warming and was not nearly so front and center in how people talked about the future. All in all, the 90s were a pretty solid decade. I remember this weird video of celebrities talking about what you can do to help fight global warming, and they kept cutting back to Chevy Chase saying shower with a friend. Full-size frosted strawberry Pop-Tarts. They're like half the thickness these days. That and eating them while watching back-to-back episodes of Saved by the Bell on Saturday mornings. Good times. Pre-social media mindset. It seems nowadays, it's bringing in more negativity than positive. Also, social media influencers weren't a thing. When you went to a rave, which were mostly all underground then, you were taught about the responsibility of researching drugs on Erowid. Mystery. Not having read everything. The feeling that anything could happen, because you haven't learned read seen so many things. Things being super fresh. How uninhibited, freshly uncensored and creative people were because they weren't constantly preoccupied with their social media presence. Being attacked online. People diminish their energy now tremendously because of social media. It isn't even close to the same universe. People pretend not to be uptight and suffocated in that way, to pretend to vibe. But it will never stop looking put onto me. I miss the internet being fun and optimistic. I genuinely feel like the internet has gone from the most important and greatest achievement of humanity to something that might have been a mistake during my lifetime. It's really sad because a global communications network should be a great thing for everyone. The internet has gotten really heavy and depressing in the past few years. Even 10 years ago the internet felt much more lighthearted. Being able to afford a decent 1BR apartment on the top floor of a building in a nice, trendy neighborhood of Seattle on $28k a year. My rent was $550 a month for several years. To have lived in Seattle then, frick. I miss getting a new album from a band, in cassette form, popping it into my Walkman and just exploring my neighborhood listening to the same songs over and over. Now with music streaming services and access to all of the music ever created, I actually almost never listen to new music. And when I do, I feel silly listening to it over and over. Even songs I like these days, I rarely remember the words to, and I never even remember track titles. It used to be, if I got a Green Day album, I listened to it until I memorized all of the track names and all of the lyrics. Simpler times and more free time, I guess. I loved folding out the insert from the cassette and reading the lyrics while I listened. The world being so much smaller. Sure, there are a lot of really great things about being able to talk to anyone, anywhere at any time, but the appreciation of how big and impressive the world really is because of how hard it was to contact people in different countries, and the bonds you formed with people in your closer community is something that is gone forever. Paying $23 for a CD. Yes, it sucked because it was so expensive, but it really made you want to dive into the experience. I miss being a little more detached from everything. Yeah, technology was booming, but there was a sense of independence that I feel like a lot of kids don't have anymore. I feel like growing up in the middle class US in the 90s had the best of both worlds. I was able to play video games and all that stuff, but I still had the freedom of my mom not knowing where I was at every second of the day when I was out in the woods with my friends or playing somewhere. I also miss the whole sense of being proud to be a kid, if that makes sense, where the divide between childhood and adulthood was not a thin line. I mean that in the sense of we had shows like Recess and the Kids' Unwritten Code of Honor, and we had celebrities who were just for us. I do think that today's culture, especially with social media, has muddled the line between childhood and adulthood. I don't think it's bad, and I don't mean it to come off in a Holden Caulfield kind of way, and I'm sure that Gen Z is having and had fantastic childhoods too. I just think that kids today are thrust into maturity a lot faster than us 90s kids were. Gen Z here still have whiplash from going from modern day 6th grade to modern day 7th grade. Listening to music on the radio. It was much easier to listen to new music when I wasn't really in control of the music I listened to. Now I'm one of those people with the same playlist with few songs that never gets really updated. Making plans with other people. Ubiquitous cell phone ownership and usage has made everything very on the fly. Just hanging out with people required legit planning. There was no such thing as let me call so and see where they're at, because if the answer was anything other than sitting by the phone waiting for your call, then you were out of luck. But it meant that those interactions were much more deliberate and meaningful. You looked forward to those meetups. We don't make plans for the small stuff anymore. We just fish for interest in the moment, and maybe someone is bored and will stop by. In some ways it's much more convenient, but that convenience has taken something away from the quality of the experience. The fact that you had to gather with friends to hang around and start conversations, not just use your phone and text the whole time. Airports. I miss how chill and cool airports were. Watching the plane leave after hugging my parents goodbye, or waiting at the window watching it dock knowing someone you were waiting for was about to get off. I also miss AOL chatrooms. Going into chatrooms that had a bunch of teens going wild and meeting people in there. It was really cool. Honestly, everything. Ranging from that first day when I watched Friends to the day when Eminem topped the Billboard that were 2000, but I'll never forget the small television and Walkman and the 90s fashion sense. I miss the days everybody was trying to be different, which so ironic now, because now if you aren't in sync with what people are today, then you are behind and stuff. It was such a carefree era. I loved my teens. Standing out front of Electronics Boutique to watch the Final Fantasy VII trailers while waiting for the game to be released. Not always, but sometimes I miss everyone not being able to buy everything anytime they want. Going to the mall to get a band t-shirt and debuting it at school for the first time was fun, as nerdy as that sounds. And buying gifts for people is pointless now. Everyone can buy whatever themselves. Here's an oddly specific one for the pre-internet 90s. Pre-widespread internet. You know what I mean. Before every kid had it. I miss the discovery of things like secrets and cheat codes for video games. I remember with Mario 3 how a babysitter showed me and my sister how to find one of the warp whistles. Then I learned about another one from a cousin. You couldn't just look it up. Someone had to find out from someone in a big game of telephone, and you had to learn about it. Later on I found most cheat secrets could be found in magazines and such, but even then they were usually put in there sporadically, so unless you had every subscription at some point you'd need someone's help to learn about it. Everything worked this way. There was no Yelp to find good restaurants. You really had to seek things out and talk to people to find out about things. It's great with the instant access of today, but it was also an adventure in itself back then to figure things out the hard way. Going back to school after summer break. I was telling my kid that was the best part about going back to school. Seeing everyone's new clothes and hearing what they did over summer break. Nowadays, there is no element of surprise. Same thing for high school reunions, etc. Social media ruined that as well. Life before the internet and smartphone seems like ages ago. I know I sound old, but I miss those days sometimes, honestly. Kids going outside and doing crap. When I was a kid, every day was a new adventure with my friends. We'd go on bike rides, play in the creek, go hiking in the woods, and run from the neighborhood bullies. I have an 8-year-old niece that does absolutely nothing. She doesn't know how to ride a bike and spends her summers at home playing on a tablet or watching TV. Most kids her age do the same crap. No one goes outside or has a social life anymore. Seriously, what happened? I'm happy to say that the kids in my neighborhood actually do crap outside quite often. My ex-GF's daughter, however, was much more like you describe. She is literally on her phone or laptop or PlayStation all day long. She only comes out for food and water. A lot of people have mentioned that they miss not being so connected, not always having a cell phone on them. I miss being unafraid of not having a cell phone on me. What if I get stuck in an elevator? If I'm driving and the car breaks down? I'm traveling, shopping, at any large venue, park, whatever, and get separated from who I'm with. Somehow, pre-cell phones, we dealt with it and survived. Now I'd be in a total panic. If somebody didn't know where you were, it was a whole thing. Like, time to call every one of their friends or start driving around looking for them. Stores that have long been disestablished, like Media Play, Pier 1 Imports, Toys R Us, Service Merchandise, and Montgomery Ward. The old AOL chat rooms. I met so many cool and interesting people in those rooms. In fact, I met my longtime partner in one. The rock concerts with amazing new bands. Seeing Weezer, Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, Pavement, Beck, Hum, Helmet, Bikini Kill, That Dog, all in their prime as young musicians. I still follow and love music now, but the alternative indie scene of the 90s was something I'll always miss. The bigger bands were awesome, but when you would go see Lush at the Whiskey and be around other Lush fans, you felt like you were in an exclusive group. No phones recording it. Tickets were like $15 to $30, and sometimes they would do free in-store shows at record stores. So many great shows. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.